every tube, every pipe, there's two things that can go wrong. It can either, burst or get clogged. So it's a big problem. It's almost as big as heart attack. We can build devices that take clots out of the brain.
Just everything was possible. There's nothing that was too crazy.
You can't replace part of the brain. Like,
you treat them the same.
Source of truth for the MedTech industry.
Coexists with the prophets.
Robot understands things automatically.
Number one show in the MedTech industry.
So Stryker got ahead of that and changed in the $90 billion company. They had held up high, a lot of things.
The state of MedTech with your host, Omar M. Khatib.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. This episode, we're going to be focused a lot on stroke innovation. You guys remember one of the, I think, top 5 episodes, maybe top 3 episodes that we had was with Dr. Mohammed Taleb, who's a interventional neurovascular specialist down in Banner Health. Stroke is a huge problem. One of the things about being in MedTech is working on innovation that affects somebody that you know. Stroke is something that everybody has had someone in their life that was affected by it. For me, it was my late mentor, Chris Sells, who passed away in his early 50s. And so for that, we have Ronen Eckhouse, who's the CEO of Rapid Medical. And shout out to my good friend, Ali Ajaz, who made the connection. And one of the things I love about the show is that a lot of people who either I've mentored or become friends through LinkedIn will reach out and introduce me to a really cool company. So I was not familiar with Rapid Medical until now. So Ronen, thank you so much for joining the show. How are you doing?
Doing well, and thanks so much for the opportunity. And I'll join your shout out for Ali. I'm grateful for making the connection and allowing me to be here, and also a great shout out to Dr. Taleb.
Oh yeah, he's a good human.
Which is one of the nicest physicians I ever met. So such a nice person.
He's a good human. Right. He's a really good human. Yeah,
right.
He's a really good basketball player too, by the way.
I didn't know that. But
yeah, if you follow his Instagram, you'll see every now and then some basketball clips. But he's really good, amazing guy. And thanks for staying up late and joining us from Israel. So we appreciate that. Where'd you grow up? How did you get into this industry? And then what brought you to Rapid Medical?
So I grew up in Israel, although I did quite a long time in California as a young kid, and also went to school kind of Berkeley. So did spend around 8 years in California. So I did get some of the vibe, I guess. The weather is quite similar to Israel, so it wasn't a big change on that. But I grew up in Israel in the northern part, and then started as an electrical engineer in the Technion, and worked in a company which is now NVIDIA, a very successful company. Worked there for several years, then went to Berkeley to get my MBA, met a friend who was working at a company called Concentric. At the time, they had the first ever device that was approved for Clot Retrieval on the brain. He introduced me to stroke, and since then, I've been kind of fully dedicated 100% to trying to help treat patients who are hurt by this really terrible disease. As you mentioned, all of us know someone who has been affected by stroke, and I believe we can do a lot better than what we're doing now. And that's basically why we started Rapid.
You mentioned you worked at NVIDIA for a little bit?
It was a company called Mellanox. I worked there for many years. It was acquired by NVIDIA a long time ago. Today, it accounts for, I think, a third of the NVIDIA revenue comes from Mellanox
so
at the time.
It's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money.
Just out of curiosity, like your time in Silicon Valley, what were some of the key things that you learned from living in a place like that? Because I went and lived there for many years to kind of cut my teeth in tech, but what were some things that you kind of learned from there that sort of took you into your career later on?
First of all, you meet all these amazing people from all over the world, and everybody are filled with this understanding that everything is possible and there's no no's. And, this is a place where things happen. And that's kind of, it's contagious. People, you hear people say that and you start believing that you can do the same. It's a very special environment in that front. While we're studying at Berkeley, we had all these people from Silicon Valley come in and kind of give classes. People like Eric Ries, who wrote, Lean Startup and stuff like that. So all these kind of great people that you read about, and then you meet them kind of in real life flesh. And that I think made a huge impression on me. This can-do culture, and no dream is big enough or is unsustainable, is something that I think I enjoyed a lot. That, and also I learned, I came from semiconductors. I thought that everything in the world is semiconductors, and you suddenly get into this place and you understand there's so many other things, and tech is actually Amazon and semiconductors and lots of things and medical devices, stuff like that. So really open up my mind to the possibilities of things that can be done. So it was great. You really
I would agree that even my friends who are from New York, when they would come to Silicon Valley, they thought that like people in New York really work really hard in the city. And they're like, yeah, we've never seen people work so much, so diligently. And I think that's the kind of the thing I miss about Silicon Valley. Now I live in SoCal with my family, but the Valley, just everything was possible. There's nothing that was too crazy, and I think I miss, going to parties or cafes and meeting people up and just like the wealth of ideas and things going around you. Like you feel it definitely for sure. I also tell young people, if they're interested in being an entrepreneur, like go, even if you don't have to be there, like just go do it in Palo Alto, because aside from being in that environment, there's like nothing to do, like I know a lot of there's a lot of entrepreneurs and everything. They're like, oh, I want to go to Miami. There's a lot of venture. I'm like, don't do that. There's a lot of distractions in Miami too. A lot of distractions,
Right.
So,
you go to a coffee place where literally the table you sit,
like Red Rocks, I think it's called.
I think Mark Zuckerberg and, Steve Jobs sat there and in their jeans and,
Yes.
you know what I mean? Just like any other person. Or I worked at Amazon for my internship. I met Jeff Bezos 3 or 4 times. And you learn that on the one side, these people are amazing, what they achieve. But on the other side, they're people like us. So they're live in flesh. So it gives you kind of sense that, you're not Steve Jobs, but maybe you also have a chance. You know what I mean? It kind of turns entrepreneurship into something which is tangible, even for someone like me, in a way.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know that makes sense.
Oh, it makes a lot of sense. And especially, I guess, there's something to be said. I guess people don't think of it like this, but historically, being in places like that to feel it, right? There's a feeling there, right? So, after your time in the Valley, like how essentially did you come about finding, Rapid Medical? How did you become the CEO? And kind of start there, and I will dive into the problem that you guys solve.
Sure. So I come from a family of entrepreneurs. My grandfather was an entrepreneur. My father is a very successful medical device entrepreneur. I had no idea I wanted to go into medical devices, but I did know I want to be an entrepreneur at some point. I had 2 sisters. Both of them are also entrepreneurs. Family of doctors. Everybody are doctors. In my family, that's what we do. Sometimes it's more successful, sometimes less successful, but it's kind of, in a way, that's the expected route. So that is something I was kind of looking for in the back of my mind. And as I said, when I met this person, which I knew from before, I knew I wanted to do something. He came with this kind of amazing market or amazing problem. We'll talk about that. And we were in the Silicon Valley where everything's possible. We said, well, we can do this, which, I think now 15 years later, we can, but it took us a long time. But the combination of the 3 things, I think, is what kind of culminated in Rapid Medical.
That's really rare, by the way, that somebody comes from not just a family of entrepreneurs, but like medical device entrepreneurs. Your father, was he also in stroke care? Or what area of medical devices was he in?
He's done quite a few things. He's still involved in many companies, but he's more in the aesthetic, kind of medical device aesthetic field. He's very, very successful there. Started companies, which you might know, like Luminous and Cineron.
Yeah, I actually spent some time in the aesthetic space. So I know those companies. So those all have your dad's fingerprint on it.
Yes.
So let's talk about the problem you guys solve. So everybody's aware of stroke, but maybe you can share a little bit about the numbers about how big of a problem this is.
So it's a big problem. It's almost as big as heart attack. So there's around 1 million kind of heart attacks in the U.S. every year and around 800,000 strokes in the U.S. every year. So it's a very big problem, but it's very unique in many ways. And if it's okay with you, I will kind of take your question one step further.
Please.
And explain why I think it's very unique. So it's very unique because, one, it deals with the brain, which, as we all know, is our very most important organ in the body. But unlike other diseases in the brain, like Alzheimer or dementia, it's relatively simple. In most cases, about 90% of the cases, it's an occlusion, and typically it's a clot. So we know where and who the culprit is, and we know that if we take the clot out, good things will happen. Very different from other diseases of the brain. So we have this big disease of the brain, a relatively simple mechanism of action, but with very few solutions. So that's kind of why we started. We said we know endovascular care works in the heart. It did amazing thing for kind of people who have heart attack. There's no fundamental reason it should not be the same in stroke. There are differences, we can talk about it, but that's kind of basically why we started the company. This must work in stroke. We can build devices that take clots out of the brain, and we can build devices that do that quickly and easily and safely. And we'll probably get into that as well. But that was kind of the basic premise of the company, and we were very stubborn on the vision. That is still true today. That is still what we're trying to do. The other thing which is very critical in stroke, unlike other diseases, is time. If I can treat a patient I'm talking about ischemic stroke, they're occlusive. If I can treat a patient within 2 hours, the chances of the patient getting better are about 90%. When that time goes up to 6 hours, that percentage goes down to 20 or 30%. So time is the most important thing in stroke, which kind of what you kind of learn from that is that the closer you are to the patient, the closer you can treat the patient, the better. So it's not helpful to get the best treatment in the world if it's if it takes you 10 hours to get there or 24 hours to get there. In some diseases it is, not in stroke. So in stroke you rather have a quick, good treatment versus a slow kind of perfect treatment. So that's kind of another thing, and we can talk about that as well, but that's another difference in stroke. So time is really critical.
Prior to devices like Rapids, how essentially was like things like ischemic stroke treated? Can you also, for the audience who's not from a neuro background, tell them the difference between ischemic?
Of course. Yeah, apologize for that. So every tube, every pipe, there's two things that can go wrong. It can either burst or get clogged. It's true for our kitchen. It's true for the blood vessels in the brain. And when we have issues with blood supply in the brain, it's called a stroke. When it turns into kind of a clinical appearance and neurological deterioration, that's called a stroke. So there's basically the blocker and the bleeder. Around 90% of the times in the US or kind of in Western or developed countries, 90% of the time it's the blocker. And typically, this is another difference from the heart, it's not that the blood vessel is sick and we have kind of stenosis. It's a clot somewhere from the body that finds its place to the brain, gets stuck typically in a bifurcation, and then occludes the blood supply in the brain. The occlusion, that's called ischemic stroke. And what happens is the brain has ways to compensate the blood supply, but they're not ideal. So we do have some time to kind of open up the occlusion and restore the blood supply, but it's not endless. And the more time that goes by, the more the brain suffers, the more the chances that neurons die, and so forth.
Got it. And when you guys are coming, first of all, like when did you guys get your FDA clearance?
We got our FDA clearance for the TigerTrever in 2021.
Okay, so right around that time, like what solutions were on the market already, and what makes it like? I think so you have 3 different products from what I can see, and for those who are interested, go to rapid-medical.com. You have the TigerTrever, you have the Comaneci, and then the DriveWire, but the TigerTrever seems to be like the main product, right?
Right.
So
right.
What was on the market at the time? Like, how did those other devices work, and what makes us different? Like, what's the big differentiator?
So the main way to take clot out of there's one drug that is a clot buster. Only one. It's called TPA, and you can use that up to 4.5 hours. But other than that one drug, which works about 50% of the time and can cause severe bleedings, there's the endovascular, the mechanical way. And what people kind of started doing to get the clots out is they take a stent, which is like a metal mesh. They open it against the clot, wait for that mesh. So it's a memory kind of metal like nitinol. They wait around 5 minutes, the stent opens up against the clot, entangles all the clot, and then they pull everything out. That device is called a StentRetriever. It's based on the first and still the market leader comes from Medtronic. It's a device called Solitaire. It was never invented for clot retrieval. It was invented as a stent for the brain to treat aneurysms. But when physicians, there were clots in the brain, they didn't have anything to do. They said, you know what? Let's try opening a stent and dragging it out, and hopefully it will take the clot out, and it worked.
So Ronen, for some of the audience who are watching on Spotify and YouTube, I'm going to bring up the device so people can actually see it. Maybe you can walk us through a little bit about what we're seeing here. So let me just jump to my screen here. Here we go. And by the way, there's somewhere else on the website you want me to navigate to, let me know. But I have the TigerTrever up. And so the first thing I noticed, and I think this is kind of perhaps why you guys named the company Rapid, is that it's a very simple device. You essentially have a handle that's ergonomically designed. And you have like one button that you can use your thumb to slide up and down, and that's going to essentially operate the device to expand and compress it.
Well, you got it, Omar. You're ready to treat stroke.
So you guys got this cleared in 2021. Why didn't devices work this way before?
Good question. The competing device is just a self-expanding mesh that just like a spring. It jumps, it gets to a certain size, and you pull it out. What we thought, the reason we designed TigerTrever this way is because it's not only about engaging the clot and applying a lot of force, you also want to be very careful. So that's kind of the trick. That's kind of where clot removal becomes tricky. Is it's not only about taking the clot out, it's about doing it safely. And what we can do with kind of as a controllable device, as you have shown on our website, is on the one hand, apply a lot of force to the clot. You don't have to wait 5 minutes. The physician sees everything. But on the other hand, when I pull it out, I can reduce it and size it exactly to the vessel to kind of make minimal damage on the vessel. So I want to be aggressive on the clot, but I want to be very careful on the brain. And this is something you can only do with the controllable devices. The other advantages of controllable, which are maybe less intuitive, one is that you can build very small devices with our technologies. So we have the smallest StentRetriever in the world, the only stent that will probably be indicated for treating more kind of deep clots deeper in the brain, what's called medium vessel occlusions. You can build very small stents. You can build very big stent retrievers. And the third thing is, just imagine instead of a physician thumb operating the clot, it's very easy to take that and connect that to a digital control, where the digital control will apply kind of the perfect kind of algorithm on the clot, maybe open and close it 5 times to get perfect integration, size it exactly to the vessel and stuff like that before you take it out. So the next step is not mechanical control, but digital control.
Yeah, and just kind of looking at like the delivery profile that you're showing. So like Tiger compared to your competitors. So like Tiger, if you can read this out for me, what this all means. I mean, I can visually understand. Okay, Tiger is much better, but if you can kind of walk the audience through
some odd reasons, catheters, at least in the brain, the length is in centimeters. The outer diameter is something called French. 3 French is a millimeter, and the internal diameter is in thousandths of an inch. That's how it is. And for neurovascular physicians, the idea of the microcatheter is very critical, because the smaller the catheter, the deeper you can take it into the brain, the less kind of risk it is, etc. So the way catheters are kind of divided in neurovascular is by the ID, the internal diameter. So while our TigerTrever, our 6 millimeter device, can be delivered in a 21 thousandths of an inch inner diameter, the competing device needs a 27 ounces of an inch. So since our device is completely collapsed, when I'm pushing it up to the brain, we can go to smaller sizes. And the 13, which is 13 thousandths of an inch, it's very, very small, is the smallest device. It's 25% smaller than anything else on the market. which is very important when you're not trying to go deep into the brain, because you're trying to do it kind of as with minimal interference, minimal risk to the vasculature.
Got it. And then, the other thing I was going to ask is that, like, when I look at stents, they all have different designs of braid. So for you, on the braid design, you mentioned that it's continuous braid from shaft through the device to reduce the risk of detachment. There's high vessel compliance and a J-shaped soft tip. Why is that important?
So all of the art stents we're competing with, including the solitaire stents, and all of these stents, they're made of what's called a laser cut. So they take a metal tube, 19-hole tube, they cut it with a laser, they heat set it, they shrink it, they push it up the catheter. Connected to a shaft and push it. What we did is actually we're using a technology that's called 3-dimensional braiding. So our stents are not made from a laser cut. You asked me before, why are we the only ones who are able to create such a device? Why isn't everybody doing a device which is both effective and safe? And one of the reasons is this unique technology, which we have developed, a 3-dimensional braiding. So you can create a braid which is very strong, but also has a lot of respect to the anatomy. Our braid is kind of one piece for the whole distal part, so it can be very kind of soft and flexible. The J-shaped soft tip, it's all kind of features to increase the safety of the procedure. So it's always kind of a balance between effectiveness and safety. And we think that with this technology, you can have very, very high effectiveness and very high safety. Because, you can really you can adjust the device as you need.
Now, what's, you guys just released this in 2021. So why these two other products? Like what's different about these two other products, and why did you decide?
Yes, our first product was Kumanichi. It's a product for aneurysm. Yeah, I'd suggest to spend less time on that if that's okay with you. That's
fine. But I have
no.
Because I see two other.
It's a great product. It was approved by De Novo. It's very unique. Yeah. It does things you cannot do with any other product. Treat outside the U.S. It's indicated for vasospasm treatment. Really, really nice product. But I know we don't have a lot of time, so I kind of did want to talk about the DriveWire, which I think is kind of our next kind of a very exciting product. So to treat a clot in the brain, you need two things. You need to get there, right? So you need to get access to the brain. We start from the femoral. Physicians start from femoral. They navigate the catheters up to the brain. So that's called access to the clot. And then you need a retriever to pull it out. So the TigerTrever is the retriever. What the DriveWire does, and what kind of you're seeing in this video, is redefining navigation in the brain, or access. So like similar to the TigerTrever, which is the only active stent, all the other stents are passive. And this active capability that you can change the size of the stent while you're working gives you a lot of advantages. The same is true with navigation. With regular guide wire throughout the body, it doesn't matter. You have to take the wire out, physician gives it a shape, puts it back in, etc. And for years, people have tried to do kind of a wire that you can change the shape of the wire while you're navigating, right? Think about a car that every time you need to kind of turn the wheel, need to back up, get out of the car, turn the wheel, back into the seat, drive. That's what people are doing today. Every time they need to turn the wheel, they have to go out of the car and change kind of the with this is actually a car as we know it today. You can, steer it as you need. This is what DriveWire does. And this is a product that kind of we're launching now in the US. We just got approval for this version end of last year, so it's still a limited launch. But already we're seeing physicians save a lot of procedure time, able to get to places that cannot get in any other place, kind of do it safer, quicker. So we've seen multiple cases where people they tried every wire on the market, and then it took them hours. They took the DriveWire, and they were there in 5 minutes. So we think this is kind of, I talked before about time and how important it is to kind of treat stroke kind of as close as possible or as quickly as possible. these are one of the vehicles which I think will get us there, because access to the brain is a lot. And this device here is going to make a very big difference.
Got it. Yeah. So essentially, you have like a true full solution in terms of driving and getting the physician to the point of the clot, and then you have the retriever device. So now you have like essentially a full solution.
Almost, but we're getting closer.
How are you guys? Okay. Real world data is like very important for validating these kind of technologies. How are you guys leveraging real world data to kind of validate what you guys are doing clinically, and then how you essentially improve?
So to get the TigerTrever approved, we did the trial in the US. It was supposed to be a 220 patients trial to show that we're not inferior to Solitaire. We stopped after 160 patients and showed that we were superior. We were able to show better performance with much less kind of patients, and also our safety profile was great. So that was kind of the basis of our approval in the US. We after that used that for approval in Japan, in China, and other places. We're now working on a clinical study, a very unique, one-of-a-kind study that will probably be the first study positive that shows kind of treatment of stroke, which is caused by occlusions which are deeper in the brain, something called distal occlusions. And because we have such a small stent, and a stent that's much less riskier, it is a perfect device when you're trying to go more distal, and kind of that's a trial we're working on now. And if everything goes as planned, we will be the only company that can treat these kind of, or this will be the only device you can use to treat this kind of vessel. We're kind of with the DriveWire, which you saw, it is approved, but we are working to kind of collect, as you said, real world data to show that it saves time, you can do procedures that cannot be done otherwise, it's safer, it saves you kind of multiple other wires and stuff like that. So clinical data is definitely something we're working on. And on top of that, we're starting a study. I know this might sound weird, but stroke treatment is still very early. There's so much things we don't know about stroke. So we are now conducting a study it's called Cognitive, which is actually looking to how cognitive function improve after we treat stroke. I know it sounds very intuitive, but no one has done it before. Kind of we're so early in this field that no one has looked at things like that before. But that's something we're also investing in, kind of looking at cognitive function, trying to push the whole field forward. The brain is a complicated organ, and kind of we feel it's a great privilege to be kind of part of the community that is pushing this treatment.
Fantastic. Just to pivot a little bit from the clinical side, I want to cover some stuff on the market side, mainly for the investors. So, we're going to bring you a question courtesy of our partners over at LSI, who are the most trusted source of market intel and data in our industry. They also put on the most premium investor event ever.
I heard great things. I will participate.
So if we look at, you gotta go. You're missing out. It's a great event. It's it's like Woodstock for our industry. It's amazing. You go there excited and everything, and when it ends, you're really depressed because you have to go back to work. But let me share one of their reports here, and real quick, just to kind of put into context for the people listening to some of the investors. So according to the World Stroke Organization, it's about 12.2 million strokes a year. Of those, 7.6 million, or about 62% of them, are ischemic stroke, right? This is a really, really big problem. And about 6.6 million people die from stroke each year.
Second cause of death.
Now, if we look at the second leading, so really big. So if we look at the neurovascular devices and the competitive landscape, okay? I'm going to zoom in here, and I'm going to read this out to the audience so they hear it. So if you look at the global neurovascular devices for ischemic stroke market, in 2023, Stryker was the leading supplier. Okay, so Stryker had about 37.4% market share, Penumbra at 23%, Microvention Terumo at 13.7%, and then everyone else at 25%. And we've seen that Medtronic and most recently Stryker, they've been on a, M&A activity is getting better because the wrath of Lena Khan is ending. And so people are starting to acquire more companies. So where do you see Rapid Medical playing within this market? And how do you think about, M&A activity, partnerships, where does that fall in your plan?
Well, as I said before, I think the market is still early, and stroke treatment will evolve. I mentioned digital technologies kind of really quickly, but I think we can do a lot better in treating stroke. We're still not there. As I said, we're not even looking at cognitive function, which sounds very obvious. So I expect the market to change. I expect technology to evolve like it did in many other things. And in a way, this might not sound very humble, but I think the things we are doing, we're ahead of the curve in many ways, bringing these active technologies. No one has active guide wires or active stent retrievers. No one has digital control stent retrievers. And there's other things we're working on. So I know this is not exactly what you ask, but in a way, I think this pie chart will change as the market evolves. It's still small. It's still growing. There's still 90% of stroke patients are not being treated endovascularly, and we want to change that. To do so, you need better technologies for sure. There is one technology we didn't talk about, which is aspiration, which is basically taking a catheter to clot, kind of sucking it out with a vacuum. That's quite popular. That is a trend and Penumbra is kind of the first company that introduced that to the market and still the market leader. And they've done an amazing job and kind of pushing that technology forward. But that's one example as well.
Well, what's, if you're a clinician and you have a choice of doing aspiration versus, let's say, wire, like what makes you pick one over the other? Like what would make somebody pick a wire over aspiration?
So there's different reasons. Basically, the data favors stent retriever. So if you want to get the clot out on the first attempt, it's very clear. The clinical data is very clear that you better do it with a stent, right? That said, there's a lot of physicians who say, you know what, let's start with an aspiration catheter because they think it's quicker and it's cheaper, so it's more economical. If we take the clot out, great. If we don't, we'll put a stent in. So I think that's kind of probably a very common way of thinking for physicians. In a way, aspiration is considered easier than putting, if you need to put a stent in, you need one extra step, which is not required in aspiration.
Got it. Now, one other thing I want to make sure I covered was back in, I believe, May of 2024, you guys had a really, in my opinion, exciting news. Well, I have a bias because I love robots, but you essentially completed the first successful ischemic stroke procedure with the world's first robotic thrombectomy device.
Sure.
Talk to us a little bit.
So I think you mentioned, I know you worked at Mazor and they've done amazing work at robots, but a lot of the robots today are, a robot is something that does something on its own, right? And a lot of the robots, they're manipulators. Robots. They're very amazing, tools, but they're not robots. What we build a device which automatically operates the stent retriever, open it, close as much as it needs, automatically size it to the vessel wall, and then the physician can take it out. So we have this kind of digital console. You put your TigerTrever in, you push a button, and the robot or the console does everything for the physician. They just need to pull it out. And this makes the procedure quicker, easier, more kind of predictable and repeatable. But the most importantly, it makes it safer because it knows how to size the device perfectly to the wall. There's an algorithm that kind of calculates based on different sensors that knows how to kind of size it to the perfect wall. So in a way, it's not a robot. People think about robots. They think about Corindus or, these huge robots that that do the procedure. In my mind, that's not the right way to go, right? That's not necessarily. You can put a lot of intelligence into, think of how much intelligence we have in this, right? So if you build the right devices and control them in a smart way, digitally, you can remove clots out. So our robot is not, when we said we did the first robotic thrombectomy, which is true, it wasn't this huge robot manipulating and pushing the device forward or backward. It was this small robot which kind of activated the device in a perfect way. So we did 5 cases with this technology. It was Professor Pabon in Colombia, the country, not university, and 5 out of 5 were successful. And kind of this gives us a lot of confidence that this is the future, and this is where this field should go. When you have something like that, right, going back to what I said in the beginning, when you have a push button stroke treatment, then you can democratize and have many more physicians participate and treat stroke much closer to the patients and stuff like that. If that makes sense.
So it makes a lot of sense. And I like that you mentioned this about, because I think one of the, not a misconception, but one of the market forces that new companies like with products like what you just described are going to have is that when you go to a hospital and you say robot, everyone thinks of Da Vinci. They think of a big thing, right? And there's a case to be made about making robots smaller and more miniature and everything. Another, I think it's an Israeli company,
Yep.
Microbot, isn't it? Out of Israel, yeah. They make miniature or micro robots. Now, if I Google, I just did this, by the way, just out of curiosity. If I Google who is Rapid Medical, their Gemini's AI response is that it's a global company that develops interventional tools for treating ischemic and hemorrhagic stroke. Do you feel like with an introduction like a technology like this, that Rapid is going to evolve to become more like a robotic company? And for the audience, a great example of that is Globus. So Globus is the leader for robotic spine surgery. Globus was a robotic company. For a long time, they were an implant company. And then they introduced the robot, and then they kind of assumed that identity. And now they've had this, amazing success. How do you look at introducing a technology like that and changing sort of the identity of the company, if you think of it like that at all?
Actually, I don't think about it like that because, I think we need to go back to the problem we're trying to solve. And then the technology evolves. So the going back to let's treat stroke effectively, safely, and easily. That's the problem we're trying to solve. And if a robot does that, going back to kind of you asking what I learned up in Silicon Valley, which everything is possible, then if you need to build a robot to do that, fine. If you need to build a steerable wire to do that, fine. If you need to combine them together, fine. We want to be the company that at the end of the day, we help physicians treat more strokes, because stroke is a terrible, terrible disease. One of the most terrible diseases out there. As one physician told me, you can lose different things with other diseases. With stroke is the only disease that you lose your personality, right? So it's really terrible. And we have this window, we have this opportunity to help these people. So stroke is not only the second cause of death, it's the first cause of severe disability. So, robots and digital thrombectomy, it's things we're excited about. We think we can make really, really great technologies. But at the end of the day, let's go back to what we're trying to do, if that makes sense.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And I really like that you say that, because I think that the best companies in the world, they focus on owning a problem, right? And again, I never run $1 billion company, but just as an outsider, sort of who's interviewed a lot of people in the space and everything, when I look at Globus, so Globus has done a wonderful job, but they did make an acquisition of Nevro, which is that deals with pain management, right? And so now the thought is like, okay, is Globus trying to go beyond just spine surgery and do like full patient care? So like, okay, so Globus is trying to become just like, if you have an issue or pain with spine, they're trying to own that, right? And maybe, and again, maybe I'm reading too much into this, but like Intuitive, for example, for a long time, they were Intuitive Surgical. What people don't realize is that, I forgot, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, they dropped the surgical, right? And so it seems like you guys are taking the opposite way, which is, hey, we're focused on stroke. We're going to own that, and whatever technology, devices, data, etc., we need to build around the problem, we're going to build, versus being more like technology led. And if you do that, well, things evolve, and 10, 15, 20 years later, something else comes out that changes the landscape, and now you have this problem.
Exactly.
Right?
That's how we look at this. I many times quote Jeff Bezos. He has this saying that you need to be very stubborn on the vision, but much more flexible on the details. So,
I like that. Small book recommendation for the audience. If you want to learn more about Jeff Bezos, there's a great book called The Bezos Letters, where somebody went and just essentially read all the shareholder letters and came up with a framework of how he likes to manage companies. Yeah, it's a really good book, right? It's a really, really good book. I don't know if somebody's done it, but somebody needs to do that exact same approach with the Berkshire Hathaway letters. Like there are books where you can read all the shareholder letters, but I don't think anybody went through. Well, now that we have ChatGPT, I'm sure that's going to be a lot easier to do, actually.
And I'm sure there's pearls there as well.
So as we kind of, totally. And Ronen, as we kind of wrap up, just on the investor side, so you guys are still a private company. What can you share for, let's say, investors? There's a lot of LPs and family offices who listen to the show. So like, what's kind of information can you share with them if they have any interest to learn more?
Sure, and thanks for asking that. So we are commercial. We're kind of growing and expanding in the market, but I think it was clear that we have much bigger aspirations, and there's a lot more we would like to do. So that requires resources, and if kind of someone feels they are excited about stroke treatment and what we're trying to do, we would kind of love to talk more. So we're in a good spot, but there's much more we want to do.
That's fantastic. Yeah, and I think the big thing is just, you said you guys are commercial, but simple way of putting it is just you guys are making money. You guys are generating revenue. And also, I think before Ali introduced us, I had heard about you guys also through Dr. Taleb about like really cool companies in the space, So it was, I think it was the first, like, you're not a startup per se, but you're definitely not like a big strategic like number. So yeah. Which probably is the reason why you're able to do all these like really innovative things with a very short amount of time.
Yeah, we still try to be nimble and rapid, but yeah.
Yeah, there we go. Oh, I see what you did there. I like that. Okay, Ronen, just as we kind of wrap up, a lot of like young people listen to the show and everything. And so I'm wondering, just in your career, what kind of books, may have influenced the way you think as an entrepreneur, as a leader? What kind of books do you usually recommend to people?
I want to say that I love reading. And for me, I was asked yesterday, someone asked you, who were your best mentors? And I say the books. So, you in books, you get to read, kind of learn more about people like Jeff Bezos and kind of the way he thinks about things, and, customer first, and kind of having the customer in the room and stuff like that. So, so books for me are a very important part of this job. They help you think and etc. One of the books I liked a lot is I think it's called Entrepreneurship 2.0 from no, I'm blinking, from the Build to Last and Good to Great. Jim Collins.
By Jim Collins.
So I read everything Jim Collins write, basically.
B 2.0, beyond entrepreneurship.
But for me, that's almost like the Bible of entrepreneurship. There's so many kind of pearls and things you learn there about, how to try things and fail, go back to customers and stuff like that. So, that's Jim Collins for me is a great mentor. I never met him, but I feel that I kind of know a lot about how he thinks about things, and I learned a lot from him.
Yeah, and just out of curiosity, like these days, being a CEO of a busy company, aside from reading, how else do you like to spend your time, like sort of developing yourself? Do you take executive courses? Do you listen to podcasts?
I listen to tons of podcasts. So I run quite a lot every week, and I kind of
It's a great way to
podcasts
just listen
and
to podcasts,
audiobooks and stuff like that. So it's a good thing about when you run and listening to an audiobook. So you're in a way not working but working. So kind of you get kind of this little bit, you kind of step out of the room and look at the business from the outside. And I found that a very useful way to refresh, but also kind of think about what you can improve and what can you do better.
Fantastic. Well, Ronen, thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm really excited to follow along and see the growth of your company, and more importantly, see what happens with some of the new digital products that you guys have. So, again, for the audience that's listening, whether you're a clinician or an investor, I'm going to recommend that you guys go to the website, which is rapid-medical.com. And just so you know, like when you scroll down, you have to select a region, so that way you can go to the appropriate region based on like the availability of the products. So it'll be rapid-medical.com. So with that being said, if you enjoyed this episode, an investor who likes to invest in the space, or even a clinician in stroke, please forward the episode on. That's how we grow the show. Be sure to leave 5 stars and write a review. And as always, I'm your host,
Omar. Thank you so much for what we're doing for the MedTech space. It's super important. And thank you again, and I'm privileged to be here. It was a big pleasure.
Oh, thank you. It's an honor to serve the industry, and more importantly, have really great innovators and entrepreneurs like you on the show just to share your story. So, it's fantastic. Thank you. Thanks for checking out this episode. If you want to do me a big favor and join so many other people who have helped grow this podcast, take a second and look below. If you're on Apple, give us 5 stars and write a short review. If you're on Spotify, just give us 5 stars. And if you're on YouTube, hit the like button. And most importantly, if you can, subscribe. We release so many different episodes that you may miss. Be sure to subscribe and turn your notifications on. You get extra points with me if you subscribe across all 3 channels. Thank you so much. And if you felt like this episode helped you, send this to somebody who would really enjoy and appreciate it. Share and spread the love. We'll see you all next time.